Alrighty, why you should care. Nintex just released a feature that enables governance within Office 365, and after many requests from many customers, especially in the enterprise space, we've recognized that there's a need to actually manage Nintex and who can publish workflows. So this feature is targeted just for that, and it enables people to actually set up administrators to manage all the publishers, and then you can actually set up publishing rights for people to be able to publish. Now this doesn't mean that no one can actually design and create workflows. We still leave that ability up to the users, where anyone can go in, if they have access to design, they can go in, access the workflow designer, and actually design a workflow. However, if they aren't a publisher, they can only save. So that is a different thing and something that you need to be aware of. But this is a really cool feature, and it starts to tackle more of the governance that's needed around enterprise management, especially when it comes to who can publish and not publish workflows within your organization for Office 365 when you're doing billable workflows for departments, organizations, different projects, etc. So take a look at that and let us know if you have any questions about that. But stay tuned for the next piece of it as I explain not only what it is, but how you can use it. Alright, so we're going to go into the how you can use this. So if we look at this really quick, I'm going to actually bring up the screen. We have a blog written by Marcus Platt, one of our sales engineers, who recently just went through the entire thing, and I'm not going to go through all of it because it's a lot of stuff out there. It's really good read, but definitely take a look at it as it goes through and talks about what it is, why we did it, assigning how do you actually use this thing, etc. But without that, I'm going to actually show you right here how this thing works and how you can get started with the administration portal inside, or the administration management portal inside of Nintex for Office 365. So let's look at this really quick. So I'm going to make this big. Alrighty, so when you log in, you normally just see workflows and connections, so you typically see all your workflows inside of a particular list. How you get to this is quite simple. You start at your site content, so go to the cog, site contents, easiest way to do it. Once you go there, you'll then be able to scroll all the way down till you see the Nintex Workflow for Office 365 app. Click on that and that will open up your workflow gallery page. The workflow gallery page lists all your workflows within that site. You can do this per site, or you can go to one area and then manage this up. Now, do note that you are required to be a tenant level administrator to actually manage this new feature. But you'll see this new thing here called settings, and then under here you can go to administration or administrator management. Now, if you are not an administrator or you have not done this before, when you log in here, you will actually see the ability to register as an admin, and that will require tenant level administration. Really good thing. Tenant level administrator is just required to read all of Microsoft Graph to understand who's in your organization, who do you want to add as either administrators, or who do you want to add as publishers. That's the whole purpose of it, is read only, so don't freak out when it comes to security around what is this thing trying to do. It's simply wanting to read and get access to that so they can validate who you're adding as administrators or publishers. But simply you can do that once you are registered as a tenant admin. So getting the tenant admin to do that, ideally if you're not a tenant admin, have them register themselves and then register you so that you can then administrate this on behalf of your organization or your department, etc. You can go in here once it's set up and you can add another user. You can also add more users at one time. Ideally though, you don't want everyone to be an administrator. This isn't something where you just give everyone access to. You want to actually allow this to be done on a minimum basis, as you can continually understand how users will actually use this and manage this. This is a change management thing. This isn't a workflow publishing thing. This is more around governance and change management. So keep that in mind. But you can add multiple users at one time and then hit add, and they'll obviously add them in here. And these are administrators. Administrators can then therefore add publishers. And it's a new feature here that you'll see here. Typically this is what the feature looks like when you first start out. I'll undo that. It'll come in and then simply say all users with design permission. This is how it is normally set up in your tenant before you make any changes. Anyone who can access Nintex can publish, and that's how it is. That's how it's always been, and here's where we're bringing more governance. We want to restrict publishing, and in some cases this makes sense. You don't want just anyone publishing workflows, especially if it's in a department and you need to allocate those specifically for different projects. Well, you want to restrict workflow publishing. However, by default, and this is something you should not uncheck, please do not uncheck, they allow designers to view users with workflow publish permissions. This basically enables anyone to still design a workflow. It will save the workflow. However, when it comes to publishing, they won't be able to publish it, but they can come in here and they will be able to see the list of workflow publishers. That is helpful for them to be able to connect with the person to potentially publish a workflow for them so that they can continue testing it or validate why they need that workflow published. In some cases where it's just a simple form and a workflow with an approval process, you may want to either add them as a workflow publisher or publish it on their behalf and create a process around that. More on that to come in the future. But simply adding users here, ideally you can add a user. I'll just do Richard again. So he's not only an administrator, but he's an approved publisher. And by doing this, now he's listed as a workflow publisher, which is a really good feature. So that's what the feature is, administration management and workflow publishers. It's right there. One other thing I like to say as a caveat to this, you also have the ability to manage now tenant level connections, and that is something that's a little different. So before we had shared connections that were available just within a site or site collection. Well, with this we've actually created tenant level connections, which allows you, if you're an administrator, to create a connection that is shared across the entire tenant for a very particular reason. So you want to have a service account that connects to, say, Salesforce or Box or to a HRIS system, etc. You can have one tenant level connection that is used for that, and all users can get access to that. You can also manage that as well. So look forward to that. Test it out. Let me know what you think about it. Post in the comments below. And as always, figure out how this works with your organization. Not everything is applicable for everyone. So keep that in mind as you look at different features and functionality available inside the Nintex platform. Alright, so how does this work? This is one of the really cool things to actually show you live and in action how this thing works and how it's applicable to your organization. So if you remember from earlier, we just talked about workflow publishers, and I'm going to go back to and look at who can publish. So Richard Rowe is set up as a workflow publisher inside of my tenant, and typically that means he's the only one that can actually publish a workflow. I'm going to flip over to Firefox, so I'm using Chrome and Firefox differently as a different user, Jane Doe, to show you. Actually, let me just remove her as an administrator first. Let's do that so that she's not in there. But now I'm going to flip over to Firefox and show you what does it look like for Jane when she walks in as someone that does not have publishing rights and is not an administrator inside of the Nintex piece of it. Jane is still listed as a site collection administrator, so just bear that in mind. She has all the power within SharePoint, but within Nintex she doesn't, and this is what it looks like. So within SharePoint, she's navigating, and I've actually already opened up a document here, or a document library. I'm going to open up the Nintex Workflow Canvas or the Nintex Workflow Designer so that she can actually see this. It loads in the workflow gallery first, and as normal, she can see the list of workflows that are available inside of that site, and it should also list up any other connections and settings that are available to use. So we'll look at this really quick. So workflows, I don't think there's any here. So there are some here. So she see her workflows, and these have been published by me, a different user. She can see any list of connections that are there. And then she can also come here and see administrators, which is really good. And see, here's a tool where if she was a tenant level admin, she could register. But workflow publisher, she can see who the workflow publisher is. So let's go in and look at, let's actually try to create a new workflow. And as you see right here, right off the bat, you have this new red ribbon that comes up and says your permissions are allow you to save but not to publish. Contact your Nintex administrator. So this is one of those things, as a user, she can actually come in and design a workflow. I'm going to just do a quick send email. Actually, let's just do a log so I don't have to configure all of that. So I'm going to log to history, and this is just for the sake of saving it. Cannot publish. Spell it correctly. Publish. There we go. So I'm going to save that, and then now if you notice here, I cannot publish at all. Publish is grayed out, which is great because that's what it should do, but I can save. One of the things about saving this is I'm going to do publish test. Oops. Test. So save it. And it still has to go through the validation process as normal. It still has a render. That means that the workflow still needs to be configured relatively correctly, but it doesn't require you to actually post. So you can post and test this out to see, well, is the logic that I have in here actually good, or is it working? But it does allow you to save it. So she can come out here and do this, and then the next thing is actually just simply contact the administrator to have them publish it on your behalf. So let's look and see, what does this look like? I'm going to go back to that site and actually see if I can find the document library. And as this loads, it should load up the workflow gallery as normal. and then it should load up the workflows that are available there to be either published or not published, ones that have already been published, etc. So it takes a few seconds, but it allows you to actually pull in all the data, and it's allowing us to assign permissions accordingly. So we can look at here, publish test is not there, and I want to go in here and edit this workflow, and I should be able to publish this because, again, I'm registered as an administrator for Nintex. This is different from SharePoint. This is a Nintex administrator. So in theory, you could have a standard user who does not have permissions or does not have access from a SharePoint point of view, maybe just a standard user, or it could be a member in a site, not necessarily a site owner or a site collection administrator, but they could have publishing rights. And that's something that you have to think about when you look at change management of how you want to start to govern workflow usage and publishing. You don't want to bottleneck it to where no one can actually do any work because they can't publish workflows, but you also don't want to keep it wide open so that anyone can publish workflows, and now you don't have control over what workflows are out there, what they're doing, how they're doing it, etc. So keep those things in mind. Again, if you have any questions about anything regarding Nintex, especially with this feature, the administration management, connection management, and also workflow publishers, post them in the comments below. Shoot me a link or shoot me the email at eharris04 or on Twitter rather, and then the email also on the community Nintex Connect or community.nintex.com. We'll be glad answering your questions out there as well as we look at more around the administration and how do you actually start to apply more governance in Office 365 with this new feature that's available. So until next time, have a good one. Thanks for watching the Nintex Hangout, and I hope to hang out with you soon.